it seems that maybe it's this kind of what I perceive as likely end of capitalism for the near future times, where the competition for money is ever greater, that there's ever more ploys that are used on people. And maybe it doesn't just have to do with capitalism at all. It's just part of the human condition. I'm not going to be talking with you here about scams, like those phishing expeditions where you get emails saying, we need your bank information updated, which of course is generally phony. If you have any doubts, by the way, always go to the website of that bank or of the Comcast or whatever your provider you've got, and deal directly through that site. Never respond to those emails. And second, of course, similarly, those robocalls where people are calling for an ostensible charity or whatever, but there's no way to verify. It's very difficult to verify the legitimacy of a phone call. Don't make donations or give any personal information on the phone unless you're damn sure that it's somebody you trust. So what I'm going to talk about is not scams, but ploys, some of which have to do with money, many of which don't. I want to talk about a core one in relationships. What's getting a lot of play these days is the concept of gaslighting, and it's very appealing because it refers to when usually a romantic partner, or it could be a business partner, but usually a romantic partner, makes you feel crazy for believing a certain thing, and you end up starting to believe it. And so it's very reassuring that if you're the person who's constantly getting criticized for being crazy or wrong by your romantic partner, it's very appealing to think, oh yeah, that's just gaslighting. And sometimes it is. It's a ploy to gain power. But sometimes one romantic partner is much more often right than the other, and the other is much more often wrong. And so it's not gaslighting. So I want to give you some nuance here. So if your romantic partner or your boss is constantly saying you're wrong, maybe even saying or implying that you're crazy, it may be a ploy, but it may be, is it possible that you have an inflated self-esteem that's making you think you're right a lot more often than you are? Of course, I can't help you here, but all the best I can do is say, try to be statesman-like, dispassionate about it, and think about whether you're getting gaslighted or you're in fact wrong a lot of the time. Another scam that's used in relationships all the time is what I call the brownie point scam. Your romantic partner typically, or a worker, does something and wants to extract maximum credit, saying how difficult it was doing this, and oh, am I exhausted, what a day I had today, in an attempt to either justify their not very hard-working existence or to simply get a lot of sympathy or even gifts or more love or whatever. That brownie point thing can be, sometimes obviously people are exhausted and at times, and people do deserve credit and etc. But beware of that ploy being used on you, where people are trying to extract extra brownie points and goodies from you in excess of what the actual suffering they did. And there's a converse of that, which is extra blaming you for something bad. Let's say you forgot your romantic partner's birthday. It's a faux pas, for sure. But when that person then extracts how could you do this to me? You know how important my birthday is to me. I always remember yours. And, in an attempt to extract lots of, not just apology, but often recompense in one way or the other. Be aware of the extra, whether it be extra brownie points that they want for something that they did, or extra blaming you for something bad that you did. Another ploy that's very common is feigned interest. That is, interest that's not legitimate. And that could be a salesperson who's, really asking you questions and nodding and body language leaning forward. There, salespeople are trained to do that, to listen well, to ask questions, to smile, even flirt a little. But it's not real. All they see, most salespeople, or many, let me just say many, don't see you as a person. They see you as dollar signs. And their interest or their other kind of ploys, which we'll discuss in a moment, are not about you, but it's about your dollars. So be careful when you're just, if you're having to deal with a salesperson rather than simply buying something on Amazon and making your decision based on your clear needs and your reader reviews and the reader reviews, etc. Be sure you're not overly swayed by the salesperson's very carefully trained manipulations. And of course, that can also be true in the romantic domain. There are some people, and frankly, the more desperate they are, the more they're likely to use these ploys. They'll either dress super sexy, if knowing that many people are attracted by physical sexuality, especially in the beginning, and it may fade over time. But right now, dressing sexy, male or female, is a ploy. It's like gift wrapping, getting people to judge on the gift wrapping rather than the person inside. So be careful of somebody who is dressing too sexily or acting too sexily. Just doing things physically that imply a certain, flirtation. How much of that is legitimate? How much of that is a ploy? Of course, sexuality is a part of a relationship, and it's not to be ignored. But just be careful that you're not being overly swayed by what ends up being a ploy and then goes away once, say, after, in some cases, after the marriage, after the wedding. So be careful of feigned interest, whether it's from a salesperson, a romantic partner, or somebody you say who's at work who would like to get a promotion, and they're kissing up to you in various ways, flattering you, offering to help, flirting, whatever. It's easier said than done, but try to avoid making judgments based on something other than the merits. Okay, let's see what else. Yes, this is not as often the case, but I've seen it used a number of times, and that is a person discloses something bad about themselves, but it's relatively minor. Oh, when I was a teenager, I was a shoplifter. Oh, I went to Thailand, to Bangkok, when I was 25, and I took advantage of the red light district or whatever. And the goal there is not to be disclosing it as part of a relationship, but making a relatively innocuous disclosure in order to get a bigger one from you that can be used either to blackmail you or otherwise exert power. So be careful about disclosing too much about yourself, say your finances or your big errors you've made or are currently making, unless you're darn sure that you can trust that person to not use it against you. I want to make another comment about, talking about dressing sexily. Well, that's actually a subset of a larger ploy that's used, which is fancy trappings. Very often, when the product within isn't so great, they spend a lot on very attractive packaging, whether it's a packaging in a store for a supermarket item, or I do recall an investment advisor who had a very fancy office with beautiful walnut wainscoting and gorgeous furniture with soft chairs, and he had a nice fancy address, and it turned out he was a fraud. And he took people's money, and it was a Ponzi scheme. And so generally people who are very good don't need fancy trappings. No, they don't need to be working in a hovel. They don't need to be dressed in a t-shirt like I usually wear. But, if somebody is dressed to the nines, dressed for success suit, great expensive watches, all the rest of that, beware that all that effort is being used perhaps as a ploy to hide the less impressive product within. Okay. And I probably should have done a better job of putting this in a more logical order, but I'm sorry. Hopefully it's still helpful to you. There are people who play emotional blackmail. Let's say, whether it be in a romantic relationship, let's say you're in a relationship and you really know you need to get out. This person is too high maintenance, has got too many problems, or simply there are just too many incompatibilities that have only come clear after the infatuation was over. And this person is terrified of losing you, so they say, I'd be lost without you. I've even heard of a case where somebody said, I'll commit suicide if you leave me. Well, that kind of emotional blackmail, of course, is a ploy and can be used very powerfully. Beware of that kind of thing being used on you, whether it be by a romantic partner, or let's say you're a boss and you have a coworker who's not a good performer and you want to let them go, and you emotional blackmail. I would be destitute without you. I have a family. I have children. I can't afford to lose my job. The job market is terrible with the COVID. And maybe, we're all human and we may want us to give in to the emotion. But if you think about what's best in general, overall, for the coworkers, for the customers, for yourself, and if it would be better to replace that person, try not to get sucked in by emotional blackmail. All right. When I come back, I'm going to talk about other ploys. Ploys are very common in negotiation. We'll talk about ploys in negotiation and ploys in ads that manipulate you to buy what you really, on the merits, would not buy. Anyway, I'll be just about 10 or 15 seconds. I hope you'll stay with me. I do thank you for staying with me. We are talking about ploys that are used against people all the time, or often, and trying to arm you by being aware of them so you don't succumb. Okay, so as I promised, I want to talk about some ploys that are used in negotiation. Probably the most common ploy is a lowball offer. Employers know that if they make a really low offer, there's a natural tendency for the employee to be grateful even for a small improvement over that. So let's say in the employer's heart of hearts, they're willing to pay $150,000 a year to the person. And they might say, well, I can offer you $105. That's the best we can do. And I think it's a good offer. Right? And that could be a complete lie. The person is disappointed, of course, with the 105, but very few, unless they're really, if they're superstars, then they have a lot of negotiating leverage. But if they're one of a million good employees, but not great, and you get a job offer and you want 150 and the offer comes in at 105, you're going to negotiate, but you're going to often feel grateful if you got 120 or 130. And you rationalize by saying, well, it's a good job, learning opportunity, blah, 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 blah. Beware of the lowball offer. The antidote to that is doing your homework. What are you really worth in the market? What is your fair market value? And if they're giving you a really lowball offer, first of all, that's a sign that maybe that's not an employee you want to work for, and you may just want to reject them out of hand. And it is not uncommon that they'll come back to you and say, oh, we were able to do a lot better, we can offer you 140. Okay. But doing research on what your fair market value, comparable salaries from various websites, and some of them are salary websites, but remember, this can happen on the other way around. It could be about car prices, where the most obvious is the sticker price on the car. The sticker price on the car, may say it's $40,000, and then with the upgrades and whatever they put on at the dealer level, it's $47,000. Or deep down, they could sell it for $35,000. But they're starting from this highball number, so they make you feel like you're getting a deal if you get a couple $1,000s in discount. The answer is in research. If it's a car, go to Consumer Reports, or there are other websites that list the actual cost of the car, including cost of the car to the dealer, including hidden, I don't know if kickbacks are the right word, but additional money that the car dealer gets even below the so-called wholesale cost. You need to know from where you're working, and if it's a job thing, you need to know what what is your true fair market value roughly. Another negotiation ploy that whether it be a vendor of a product like a car or jewelry or whatever, or it be an employer, is feigned anger. That's pretending to be angry. So let's say, we'll go back to the job thing. they've offered you a lowball offer of 105, and you say something like, well, it looks to me like fair market value is 150, and here are my comparables. And they said, no, you know what, those are really wrong. I'm sorry, and explain, some rationalization. And he's not really angry, but he's faking it, and may even walk away and say, I'm sorry, I think we'll need to go to our next candidate. That can be a game. That can be a ploy. And that 5 seconds of playing actor like that can result in that person getting $10, $20, $30,000 in money from you, because nobody wants to have people angry at them. So you feel like, oh my God, maybe I was wrong. He was so angry. My God, I must be off base. And suddenly you've given away a lot of money. Beware of the feigned anger ploy. And one more negotiation ploy I want you to be aware is good cop, bad cop. So the guy's offered you 105, and it could be a woman, of course. Offered you 105,000. You feel 150 is fair, and the guy is a good cop and say, I think you're right. I think it was very persuasive, that comparables you sent me. I think you're right. I think I can get you pretty close to that 150. Let me just speak to my boss, and I'll get back to you. That's the good cop. There is no bad cop in reality. But he comes back and he says, man, I tried my hardest. I did my very best for you. I could only get him to move up to 107. I know that's a long way from 150, but I couldn't get more. That's good cop, bad cop routine. Beware of that. The antidote to that is try to negotiate with the person who's the ultimate decision maker, so he can't say, I'm going to go to my boss. Try to negotiate with his boss. Okay, and now I want to finally turn to some manipulations that advertisers use to get you to buy what you really don't want to buy, to spend more on what you want to spend. It's done particularly virulently with luxury items. Jewelry, watches, luxury cars. And, ploy number one is, one of the oldest in the book, is that sex sells. You'll always see beautiful women in jewelry, in gorgeous jewelry. On vacations, you're going to see the expensive vacation packages. You'll see the sexy couple cavorting in pre-sex in the ocean. Luxury watches, luxury cars. There is always beautiful people in those, which the implication is that if only you overspend on this jewelry, on this fancy vacation, on these watches, on these luxury cars, you too will have a better sex life. Beware. Right? That's also, I think about, magazine clothing, designer fancy clothing in these magazines that are fashion magazines. Makeup. Again, only gorgeous people are in these, makeup ads. If you only wear our makeup, which costs almost nothing to make, but they charge a fortune for it, you too will be sexy and gorgeous and, meet the person of your dreams or whatever. And of course, as I said earlier, sex sells when somebody's trying to attract you. Yes, sexuality is important, but if somebody is trying too hard to be sexual, sexy dressing, tight-fitting this, and etc., that can be a ploy. You want to judge the whole person. Yes, sexuality, but that ain't the whole bandwagon, the whole shebang. Speaking of bandwagon, that's another technique, ploy, that advertisers use all the time. They always say, millions of people join the thousands who use our product. The millions have approved. People are insecure. And so they want to feel like they're not the only one who's using it or a guinea pig. So they use what's called the bandwagon technique. They make it imply that this product is so popular. When they say it's the number one bestseller, well, within what little group? It could be number one bestseller in the nation or the world, or it could be in some little, in small print. They may say, number one in a survey in 2017 of 230 people in a sample. Don't make your decision to purchase based on some bandwagon thing, unless it's people you really respect. Speaking of that, one manifestation of the bandwagon technique is celebrity endorsements and testimonials. The unassuming person may think, oh, well, if this person who I really respect endorses this and is saying this product is fabulous, well, it probably must be pretty good. No, it could be, but more often the celebrity is paid big bucks to endorse that product. They may have to use it legally for some short amount of time to be able to say, I use this product and I love it. Be careful. Make your decision about what to buy based on large numbers of reader reviews, whether it be on Yelp or Consumer Reports or Amazon, not on celebrity endorsements, not some commercial or advertisement, join the bandwagon, or not on, where they make it all look like your life will be one big, happy, successful sex life if you buy this expensive jewelry, watches, luxury cars, makeup, clothes, whatever. Anyway, so those are the some major ploys that are often used on us, and I'm trying to arm you against them so that you can make decisions that you're actually happy with. I'm just going to briefly go over them again. Number one, of course, avoid scams like phishing expeditions where they email you and they say you've got to update your contact information at this bank or utility or whatever. Only go to the website. Robocalls, again, there's no way to really know whether legitimate that call is legitimate or not. Don't make any donations or anything, or give away your private information like social security number or driver's license or address even to somebody who's calling unless you really know them. The other next scam is the Brownie point scam, where your usually romantic partner or a boss or coworker complains about how much work he or she did for on your behalf or whatever, and therefore is trying to exaggerate the amount of recompense they deserve. Conversely, extra blaming for bad. In other words, if you've screwed up and that person exaggerates the amount of suffering that they suffered as a result, trying to get more from you. Beware of gaslighting. If somebody's always saying you're wrong, you're crazy, sometimes that is a ploy. They're trying to make you doubt yourself. But sometimes not every pair of people are equally right all the same amount of time. Sometimes one person, one partner, whether it be romantically or personally or professionally, is much more often right than the other. So take an honest look inward and try to assess whether you're being gaslighted or simply somebody who's correctly pointing out that you're wrong a lot. Beware of feigned interest, whether it's a salesperson or a romantic person. If they're really listening and nodding and asking questions and smiling at you and tilting their head and whatever, that could be real, but very often it's feigned. So don't fall for that. When you want to buy a product, buy it on the merits. If it's a romantic potential partner, judge that person on their totality. And especially, very often in the romantic situation, people are on their best behavior the first 1, 2, 3 times, but watch the arc of their behavior over time. Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? That's a much more valid way to judge somebody than to immediately be sucked in by that first impression of somebody who's fully engaging and listening and smiling and etc. Okay, beware of people making a small disclosure in order to get a big one out of you. Saying they shoplifted when they're 17 to try to get you to talk about your dishonest business dealings now. Be careful to not let that mini disclosure make you open your mouth too much. Fancy trappings, watch out for it. That's a more broad example of the dressing sexy. Places, the people who dress too fancy or work in too fancy digs, especially if they're self-employed and they want your money. Be careful. Really good people don't need super fancy trappings. Judge the product, not the gift wrapping. Beware of emotional blackmail. I'd be lost without you. Maybe, but you really need to evaluate where you and your life and the greater good will accrue with you staying in that relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship or a professional relationship, somebody who's working for you. On the merits, what will really yield the most good? In negotiation, be aware of the lowball techniques, because that lowball, if they give you a lowball offer, it's very tempting for you to take it or something close to it. Beware of feigned anger and the walk-away technique where they pretend to be angry with your offer, but they're really not. And beware of the good cop, bad cop technique where the person says, I think you're right. I think you should get that higher money or whatever, more money. And they say, I just have to speak to my boss. And then the boss comes back, I'm sorry, the boss wouldn't say yes. That's a technique. Regarding ads, again, sex sells. Buy your product on the merits, not some romanticized, probably unrealistic vision of what it's going to do for your sex life, especially where they tend to use sex and advertising is jewelry, watches, luxury cars, makeup, clothing. Beware also of celebrity endorsements. Doesn't necessarily mean they really love the product. They get paid a lot of money to endorse products. Judge it on the merit, on Amazon reviews, on Yelp reviews, on Googling it, and the word reviews, not on some celebrity who may or may not really love the product. And finally, beware of the bandwagon technique. Everybody feels a little insecure about making especially a major purchase. And so advertisers will often say, join the millions of people who do whatever. Well, that can be that millions may have a lot of small print behind it. So be careful. In any event, those are some ploys I want you to consider arming yourself against. In any event, I like to end each show by saying, we find, especially in these times when there is such polarization, and we tend to hide ourselves in our ideological bubbles and reject everybody outside the bubble as wrong. I love this quote. We find comfort among those who agree with us, growth among those who don't.